He was probably the most unfazed suspect the police station had ever seen. Even though he was covered in injuries and his hands were already cuffed, he still calmly lit a cigarette for himself. Then, he took out a can of tuna and slowly opened it with a can opener. But he wasn't planning to eat it himself because he pulled out a cute little cat from his jacket and placed it on the interrogation table, letting it enjoy the tuna. The man's series of actions left the two officers sitting across from him completely stunned. They had no idea who this man really was.
Me?
Just a week earlier, he had been a middle-aged man, like most others. Every day he followed the same routine of going to work, doing boring statistical tasks, then going home to sleep, mindlessly repeating a dull life like a machine. What was even sadder was that when he came home every day, his son didn't even greet him and acted as if he didn't exist. And although his wife still slept in the same bed with him, she used a thick pillow as a barrier between them. It had been a long time since the couple had been intimate. With nowhere to vent, the only thing he could do every morning during his workout was hang from the pull-up bar while staring at his wife's beautiful advertisement photo. This miserable middle-aged man lived the same unchanging life for a whole week. That night, filled with frustration and unable to sleep, he got up to check on the kids. His little daughter was sleeping soundly. When he opened his older son's room, he found Brady staring at him with wide, nervous eyes, signaling that there was movement outside the room. Hutch immediately went downstairs cautiously to inspect the situation. As soon as he reached the living room, he discovered that the front door had been pried open and two masked intruders had broken into the house. Hutch quietly picked up a golf club and then reached for the phone to call the police. But the moment he dialed a number, the intruders spotted him. One of them pointed a gun at Hutch, threatening him to hand over all his money. Hutch had no intention of fighting them after all. His whole family was sleeping upstairs. He planned to give them some spare cash and send the two thieves away, but they thought the amount was too little and moved in to take his watch. And Hutch noticed a unique tattoo on the intruder's wrist. Just as they robbed his watch and reached for his wedding ring, someone suddenly rushed forward and tackled one of the masked intruders. It was Hutch's older son, Brady. The female intruder holding the gun panicked instantly and shouted at the two struggling on the ground. Seeing things getting out of control, Hutch swung the golf club and prepared to strike the female intruder. But the club stopped in midair, and he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not only that, he even told his son to let go of the intruder. Brady couldn't believe what his father was saying, but he still loosened his grip, only to be punched hard by the intruder. At that moment, Hutch's wife Becca also came out. The two thieves realized that more and more people were showing up, and the situation was no longer in their favor, so they cursed angrily as they opened the door and ran away. Although the intruders escaped, and everyone at home was safe, Hutch's son began to resent him deeply. They could have stopped the thieves, yet Hutch let the chance slip away. Even the young officer who arrived afterward looked at Hutch with disappointment. After the police left, the expression in Becca's eyes was filled with complicated emotions. This stirred an inexplicable anger in Hutch's heart. This should have been the moment for the two of them to talk it out, but instead they simply lay in bed silently, neither breaking the suffocating quiet. Because the two of them had lacked communication for so long, they now found themselves not even knowing where to begin. Frustrated, Hutch went downstairs and lay alone on the sofa. He looked at their old photos from when they were young and couldn't understand how things ended up this way. But at least someone still cared about him, because his little daughter Sammy climbed onto him. She was now the only person in the house willing to talk to him. Hutch woke up to the noise outside the window and realized he had once again missed the garbage truck. It ruined his mood for the entire day, and his son had clearly started mocking him more openly. Even his wife only said one thing to him that morning, that he had missed the garbage truck again. Only his precious daughter gave him a comforting smile and a big hug. When he left for work, the neighbor, in front of Brady, mocked him again and flaunted his flashy car, a 1972 Challenger with a 4.9-liter V8 engine, revving loudly before speeding away. It seemed that everyone looked down on him. Hutch arrived at work as usual. It was a metal fabrication factory owned by his father-in-law Eddie and his wife's brother Charlie. Charlie also looked down on Hutch, whom he saw as a useless son-in-law. After hearing about what happened the night before, Charlie suddenly pulled out a handgun and pointed it at Hutch's head. It turned out he wanted to give the gun to Hutch so he could protect his sister. Hutch didn't want the gun but couldn't refuse, so he secretly hid it inside an empty box in the company's refrigerator. Hutch spent the entire day pretending to work, with no intention of doing anything, repeatedly sketching the bird-shaped tattoo he had seen. When no one was around, he would lock the office door and open a cabinet that contained an old Rotel stereo system. Hutch opened a special communication channel and talked to a mysterious man about what had happened the night before. He seemed to chat with this mysterious man often, talking about everything, And Hutch also told him the real reason he didn't swing the golf club down. It turned out he had immediately recognized that the old .38 revolver hadn't been used in a long time. And most importantly, he could tell at a glance that there were no bullets loaded in it. So from that moment on, he knew the two intruders weren't much of a threat. After talking about it, Hutch felt much better and decided to visit his father in the nursing home and have lunch with him. But David immediately noticed that Hutch had something on his mind. Hutch eventually returned home. Looking through the glass window at his family inside the house, Hutch let out a sigh, because no matter what, they were still his family. And no matter how suffocating life felt, it still had to go on. His son continued ignoring him as usual, something Hutch had already gotten used to. But Sammy's sudden words were like scissors that cut the last string of patience he had been holding onto. Sammy's beaded bracelet was missing from the bowl, and that bowl was the same one the thieves had grabbed money from last night. They could take anything else, but the belongings of his beloved daughter were something he could never allow to be stolen. With a dark expression, Hutch walked straight out of the house, deciding he would endure this no longer. He returned to his father's room at the nursing home, put on a jacket, took his father's FBI badge from over 20 years ago, grabbed the handgun, and began his mission. He rode the bus around the city, visiting every tattoo shop and pretending to be an FBI agent while asking about the man with the bird-shaped tattoo. After asking countless shops, Hutch finally ran into trouble at the last one. It turned out that when he showed the fake badge, an experienced man immediately recognized the problem and pointed out that the badge had long expired. Before he could even start asking questions, he was already treated as an annoying troublemaker. Just as the big guys in the shop surrounded him, an old man nearby noticed the poker tattoo on his wrist, which showed the 7 of spades and the 2 of diamonds, the worst starting hand in Texas Hold'em. As an old-timer who had seen everything, the old man instantly understood that this middle-aged man was probably from a special government unit that handled extremely dangerous assignments. The old man's face changed instantly, and he quietly walked into a room and locked the heavy iron door behind him. This startled everyone present, and even the boss, who had been acting arrogant just moments ago, immediately shifted to a respectful attitude. Hutch finally found the couple who had robbed his home, and he slipped into their house without a sound, smashing the man in the face with the butt of his gun and making blood spill from his mouth. Hutch took back his watch, but when he asked for his daughter's bracelet, the man had no idea what he was talking about. Hutch flew into a rage, and he nearly pulled the trigger right then and there, because his daughter's belongings were something no one was allowed to take. But the man swore that he knew nothing and insisted he had never even seen a bracelet. Just as Hutch was preparing to pull the trigger, the sound of a baby crying rang in his ears. He quickly walked to the bedroom door and saw a small baby lying in a crib, crying because it had been frightened by the noise. As a father of 2 himself, Hutch could no longer bring himself to act, so he muttered angrily under his breath and turned to leave the house. After searching all night without any results, Hutch's frustration was impossible to hide. Since he had promised his daughter he would find her bracelet, returning home empty-handed filled him with despair, and he punched the stone wall again and again until his knuckles were covered in wounds. He sat silently on the bus, riding home, and because it was the last bus of the night, there were very few passengers. At that moment, a Hummer swerved uncontrollably toward the bus, and unable to avoid it, crashed into a roadside barrier, causing the bus to stop abruptly. 5 drunken thugs stumbled out of the Hummer. The thugs boarded the bus, drove away another male passenger, and surrounded the only young woman aboard. Hutch smiled at that moment because he knew he had finally found a place to release all the frustration he had been holding in. He walked past the thugs, who assumed he was just trying to get off the bus, but to their surprise, Hutch ordered the female driver to leave the bus and then closed the door behind her. Only then did the thugs realize that something was very wrong, because the middle-aged man standing before them did not seem ordinary at all.
I'm gonna you up.
They thought he was joking, but unexpectedly Hutch attacked them with his bare hands. Maybe it had been many years since he last fought, so at first Hutch seemed rusty and clumsy, but soon he regained his rhythm. Even though he was beaten badly and had a knife stuck in his side, men like him were built to endure, willing to trade blow for blow. Hutch was thrown out of a window and onto the ground, and the thugs thought the fight was over, but Hutch returned to the bus full of energy and determination. Even with blood dripping from his mouth, nothing could stop him from wanting to defeat the group in front of him. So the second round of fighting began. This time Hutch was fiercer and more ruthless, using a small knife and aiming directly for vital spots. Seeing his men almost completely defeated, the leader Teddy ran to the front of the bus and picked up Hutch's gun from the floor. Teddy tried to load the gun, but Hutch would never let him succeed, so he grabbed a metal pole and struck Teddy repeatedly, delivering a final blow to his throat. Seeing Teddy on the verge of death, Hutch suddenly showed mercy. He grabbed a straw from the ground, cut open Teddy's throat with a small knife, and inserted the straw so he could breathe a little longer. Hutch staggered off the bus, and under the shocked gaze of the female driver, he walked away unsteadily. He quietly entered his home, intending to go upstairs, but found his wife waiting for him in the living room. Seeing the state Hutch was in, Becca was stunned, unable to understand what her supposedly timid husband had gone through that night. Still, she helped him clean his wounds, and from her skilled movements, it was clear she had tended to injuries like this for Hutch in their younger days. At that moment, Hutch finally opened up to his wife. As a couple who had once loved each other deeply, they suddenly realized how many years had passed without hugs, kisses, or intimacy, as if they had become strangers sharing the same bed. When Becca heard the man who slept beside her every night say that he missed her, she could no longer hold back her tears. She understood that she had neglected her emotional connection with Hutch for many years. That night, Becca finally removed the wall of pillows placed between them. While Hutch and his wife were reconnecting, on the other side of the city, a Range Rover cut across the road and stopped aggressively at the curb. A man got out and walked straight into his own nightclub. His name was Yulian, the biggest Russian gang boss in the city, and at that moment, he walked onto the stage with a smile on his face, singing and dancing alongside the beautiful women. Although he was completely off-key, the entire crowd cheered for him. After warming up the atmosphere, Yulian entered a private room, where his men applauded him, but a few Russian partners sat stern-faced. These partners felt that as a gang leader, Yulian looked undignified singing and dancing like that. Hearing those words, his mood instantly darkened, and he smashed his glass before stabbing one of the men's bodyguards with the shards and slashing his throat. The man who had been smiling moments earlier instantly transformed into a monster, revealing his true nature. The partners were terrified and dared not make another sound. At that moment, Yulian's phone rang, and his expression changed immediately. The one whose throat Hutch had cut turned out to be Yulian's brother. Yulian stood by his brother's hospital bed with tears streaming down his face because Teddy no longer showed any response at all. He had no idea who had dared lay a hand on his brother. In his fury, he picked up a chair and smashed it onto another injured thug lying in the room. But he also had no idea who the attacker was and only knew that the person looked like an ordinary man riding a bus. Just as Yulian raged helplessly in the hospital room, another injured thug slowly raised his hand. He had picked up the attacker's bus pass during the fight. From that moment on, fate's gears began to turn uncontrollably. Yulian hired a young and talented hacker to work for him. Through the bus pass, Beta found an elderly man living in a nursing home and traced Hutch's identity from there. But Beta thought Hutch was utterly ordinary. However, Yulian, being the mob boss, did not agree, because there was no way an ordinary man could take down 5 people all by himself. Beta decided to access more classified information. She sent a blackmail email to a Pentagon official filled with compromising photos. Using this as leverage, she forced Darren to retrieve Hutch's file. With no choice, Darren logged into the internal network to search Hutch's records, but the system denied access. Desperate to save himself, Darren sneaked into a long-sealed underground archive room and finally found Hutch's file. However, all the important information in Hutch's file had been blacked out, yet there were still a large number of photos. When Beta received the file, she saw numerous disturbing photos from secret execution missions and was so terrified that she packed her belongings immediately, threw the file to Yulian, and quit on the spot, not even asking for her salary. As Yulian stared at the countless photos scattered on the floor, he finally understood that the man who had injured his brother was someone extremely dangerous. But his brother's vengeance was something he had to avenge, and at that moment, because Hutch had reconnected with his wife both physically and emotionally the night before, he felt reborn with energy and cooked a big meal for the whole family. Just as everyone was laughing and getting ready to eat, Hutch unintentionally spotted 3 cars speeding toward the house outside the window, with masked men inside holding heavy weapons. Hutch immediately sensed that they were coming for him. He hurriedly told his family to get into the basement at once. Becca had no idea what was happening and was about to ask when Hutch silenced her with a forceful kiss. Then the bewildered Becca, along with their son and daughter, were locked inside the basement by Hutch. Several armed men in black moved quickly toward the house in a V-shaped formation. They were the most elite strike team of the Russian mob, each carrying a CSG-552 assault rifle equipped with an EOTech sight, flashlight, and Magpul AFG foregrip. By then, Hutch had already cut the power to the house, and he stood in the darkness with a baseball bat, launching a fierce attack on the intruders. After taking down 2 enemies with the bat, he grabbed a kitchen knife and continued his relentless assault. Hutch used everything within reach in his home as a weapon to strike his enemies. Meanwhile, his house was being shredded by bursts from the CSG 5.52 rifles. Although Hutch managed to eliminate several more attackers, he was still outnumbered and was knocked out from behind. He was thrown into the trunk of a car. The strike team had suffered heavy losses, and of more than a dozen members, only 3 remained. On their way back, they started complaining among themselves, unaware that Hutch in the trunk was already regaining consciousness. Grinding his teeth through the pain, Hutch forced his hands free from the cuffs and grabbed a fire extinguisher to launch a counterattack. He staggered as he crawled out of the car. Meanwhile, among the 3 enforcers in the car, only 1 man was still barely clinging to life. The man had no idea who this relentless fighter in front of him really was. For the first time, Hutch decided to introduce his true identity to a stranger. He revealed that he had once been a secret operative for the agency, with the code name the Auditor. He was the one sent to deal with people who could not be arrested but absolutely had to disappear. Hutch had planned to share his secret once more, but when he looked down, he realized the man was already showing no signs of life. He rushed back home and called his father, warning him that someone might be coming after him soon. But when David heard the news, he actually smiled, as if he had been waiting for someone to come looking for trouble. By then, 2 thugs had already arrived at the nursing home. They quietly opened David's door and saw him apparently fast asleep. Just as they were about to take their chance, David suddenly opened his eyes. Without changing his expression, he calmly raised his gun and took down both men where they stood. When Hutch returned home and turned on the lights, he found the house in ruins, with bodies scattered all over the place. If his wife and children saw this scene, they would be terrified. But this house was no longer a safe place for his family. Hutch quickly washed up, then opened the basement door. He led his stunned wife and children out of the house and put them in the car. He had to get them far away from this place before he could focus on what came next. For the first time, Becca felt like her husband had become a stranger. But at that moment, she had no choice but to trust him completely. She would take the kids somewhere safe and wait for his return. With no more worries about his family, Hutch took the gold bars he had saved up from years of dangerous work. He placed all the bodies on the sofa like an audience and told his story to them once more. The reason he had gone from a cold-blooded killer to a family man went back to one particular mission, where a traitor kneeling in front of him begged for mercy, promising to change and start a new life. For some reason, Hutch felt a sudden surge of compassion that day and decided to let the man go. A year later, he tracked the man down again and discovered that the traitor truly had changed, now married with children and living a peaceful life. Standing outside the window, Hutch felt for the first time that such a life was truly wonderful. In that moment, he realized he no longer wanted to go back to his old ways. He also wanted to live as an ordinary man, start a family, and enjoy a happy life like that. So he resolutely left the CIA and became someone who seemed like an ordinary person. After pouring out his secret, Hutch felt much more at ease. He burned down his house and, as he was about to drive away, suddenly remembered the neighbor's flashy Challenger. Since he had no plans to return, he decided to enjoy how it felt to drive that car. Hutch dumped a pile of gold bars in front of Charlie and bought the factory. Charlie never imagined that the brother-in-law he always looked down on would have that kind of money. Still unwilling to admit defeat, he tried to act tough again, but Hutch silenced him with a single punch. Hutch did not buy the factory as a hideout, but to turn it into a battlefield. He used all the materials on hand to build deadly traps and weapons, waiting for his enemies to arrive. After setting everything up, Hutch went straight to see his mysterious contact in the city. Through the contact's underground network, he obtained information on Yulian. It turned out that Yulian was the most ruthless Russian gang boss in the city, and besides running the usual illegal businesses, he was also in charge of managing the mob's massive pension fund, the Obshak. That money was the most important asset of the organization, and if anything happened to it, Yulian's power would crumble. Armed with this knowledge, Hutch acted immediately. He went alone to the stronghold where the Obshak was stored, grabbed a CSG 5.52 assault rifle from one of the enemies, and single-handedly took out all the guards inside. Meanwhile, Yulian was still singing loudly in his nightclub as usual. He had no idea that his base of operations had already been wiped out. After taking down all the enemies, Hutch poured a large amount of gasoline into the fire suppression pipes and burned all the money with one single blaze. And at that moment, the show-loving Yulian had just finished an energetic song on stage when he suddenly noticed that the so-called nobody was sitting calmly below, eating a steak. His men immediately surrounded the uninvited guest. Julian genuinely admired Hutch for having the courage to come directly to his doorstep alone. The two enemies who had never met finally faced each other for the first time. The mobsters raised their guns in unison and aimed them at Hutch's head, but Hutch was not afraid, and he pulled away the tablecloth, revealing a battlefield claymore hidden underneath, with the pull ring looped around his finger. As long as his finger twitched, everyone in the hall would be done for. This was the confidence Hutch had to come alone. Julian did not dare act rashly, and he ordered everyone to step back, choosing to stay behind and talk to Hutch alone. But Hutch was not there to negotiate, and instead came to provoke him on purpose, because he knew that someone like Julian would never swallow his anger or let him and his family go. So Hutch took out a stack of burned banknotes from his pocket and tossed them onto the table. Julian instantly recognized that it was Abshak money, and the calm expression he had been forcing could no longer hold as he burst into furious shouting. And that was exactly the reaction Hutch wanted. He picked up the claymore and left the bar, swaggering past the glaring enforcers and returning to his car. Then he waited, and sure enough, it wasn't long before the enraged Julian stormed out of the bar. Hutch knew Julian had taken the bait, so he started the engine and roared past Julian on purpose, openly provoking him. Hutch lured Julian and his men all the way to his factory. As soon as he got out of the car, he was shot in the shoulder by Julian. Julian fired wildly, desperate to take Hutch down right at the factory gate. At that critical moment, the second-floor window shattered as a man appeared with a Remington 700 sniper rifle, taking out enemies with precision and covering Hutch. He was Harry, David's adopted son and Hutch's older brother, and also the mysterious voice who chatted with him through the channel every day. And David broke through the door at the same moment. It seemed that for this final party, the long-idle David had no intention of sitting out. Hutch walked into the factory and saw his father grinning with excitement, clearly thrilled to finally be back in action. A final battle officially began. Members of the Russian mob swarmed in from outside. Hutch led his father while fighting and retreating, triggering the traps he had prepared in advance. Meanwhile, Harry stood on the second floor, firing his long rifle at the attackers. Harry handled the sniper rifle with absolute mastery, and he could not only use it for long-range shots, but even swing it like a club at close range to take down enemies. Even more impressively, he took out 3 enemies with a single shot. And David had not lost his edge either, holding a Mossberg 500 shotgun and striking the enemies one by one with great enthusiasm. Hutch used all the small mechanisms he had set up earlier and fought 1 against 10. He was chased across the room and hid behind a refrigerator, suddenly remembering that a gun was hidden inside, which he immediately grabbed and put to use. With the 3 of them fighting together, it did not take long to eliminate all the enforcers. The 3 stood back to back as they fought, and for a moment it felt like the cherished memories of the past had returned. But Julian's arrival shattered their brief dream as a bullet struck Harry in the shoulder. The 3 quickly hid behind the machinery. Julian's firepower was overwhelming as he continued firing nonstop. And at that moment, Hutch and the others had completely run out of ammunition. Seeing Julian about to charge forward, Hutch suddenly remembered that he still had a major weapon he had not used. So he gritted his teeth, grabbed a riot shield, and rushed out. Both men were blasted backward by the explosion. However, in the end, Hutch stood back up, while Julian had already been blown apart beyond recognition. This time, the 3 of them had gone all in, and surprisingly, they had done quite well and enjoyed themselves. But Hutch did not let his father and brother stay long, because the police would arrive at any moment, and he still had to deal with them. After his father and brother left, Hutch called his former superior. While talking, he suddenly heard a cat's meow. Sure enough, he found a cute kitten hiding inside a pipe. Then the scene from the beginning of the movie appeared. The officers looked at this silent nobody and could do nothing about him. Just then, the male officer's phone rang, and he received a call from above telling him to release Hutch immediately. The 2 officers were completely stunned. Hutch and his family moved to a new place afterward. The house was great, but the couple still asked the agent one particular question.
Does this house have
A basement.
Meanwhile, Hutch's father and brother traveled around in their RV. And if you happen to run into them, you'd better be polite because the luggage they carry would definitely shock you.